And Russian forces are merely defending their ethnic brethren. I think Russians will stay there for a while. However, part of the Sarkozy-Medvedev agreement is for the international community to broker some sort of agreement on the status of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. And in that context, I think a resolution will be found for those two breakaway reasons, plus the location of Russian troops there.
Okay, really? Because Georgia's president doesn't seem like he's flexible on that point, that these two regions are going to stay as part of Georgia.
Right, and I guess this depends upon the creativity of the international community. There is no way that President Saakashvili of Georgia can use force to defend his view of Georgian territorial integrity by holding on to these two regions whose inhabitants, quite frankly, don't want to become part of Georgia.
Now,
and so he's going to have to find more creative ways, not alone, but with the United States, the European Union, the OSCE, NATO, who still wish to accept him as a member, and certainly with the Russians.
So what do you make of what German Chancellor Angela Merkel was saying today, that Georgia should be brought into NATO?
This was quite remarkable because, as you'll probably recall, Jacqueline, Angela Merkel was one of those Europeans who was quite muted in her condemnation of Russian aggression against Georgia, in contrast to, say, Senator John McCain's comments or President George W. Bush's comments. So all of a sudden, after meeting in Sochi and Tbilisi, she's come out and said that Georgia can very well come into the NATO security configuration. And here I think we have a loophole. I think here we have a golden opportunity to do what the international community should have done 15 years ago when the Soviet Union imploded. We, the international community, have to recreate, reinvent European security architecture so that Russia is inside the system and not on the outside, so that Russia will never again feel threatened, so that Russian troops anywhere in the region will not be viewed as interlopers, so that NATO expanding right up to the Russian frontiers will not be viewed as threats.
And just quickly before you go, do you expect this is going to further antagonize Russia, though, this talk of including Georgia into NATO, when we saw what some of the threats followed when when Poland said that it'll allow that missile defense system on its soil?
I know, complemented by a U.S. Patriot missile battery, which will certainly be viewed by the Russians as certainly aimed at them should they decide to do a Prague Spring in 1968 and invade the region, which I don't think is likely. This is all part and parcel, Jacqueline, of many people in the West fearing that we're regressing to a Cold War era. I think the Russians did what they did to make a point, and I think the point has been made, but they need the West just like the West needs them. They need the West to purchase their oil to continue being wealthy, and the West needs them to solve problems that require global coalitions like AIDS, like terrorism. And I think if Russia is inside the same European Euro-Atlantic security structure, Russia will not be threatened by whatever NATO is doing, because perhaps Russia will be in a new reframed NATO.
All right, so you seem to be thinking it's a bit of an inclusive change that we're going to see, hopefully anyway.
I think that's going to certainly be on the cards, particularly after the November presidential elections in the United States.
We'll be watching to see what happens. Dennis Sandole with George Mason University in Washington, thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline.